Good morning to everyone who's online. Lovely to see you this morning. Lots of fresh faces. Fabulous. I'd like to introduce to you this morning Robert Haberman, who's a show member, a singer, a renowned singer-songwriter who's gone from Hampstead to Finchley via a rather circuitous route, which we are going to hear about this morning. Over to you, Robert.
Oh my gosh, how wonderful. Good morning, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm going to try and do things slightly differently. Because I'm a singer, you're going to get some music as well, if I can work it all out, because of all these buttons that my friend of mine has put me together. I hope it will work. But let's start at the beginning, because of those of you who don't know me, because there are so many of you in the synagogue, and we don't know who you are, but you've all achieved so much, such a wonderful variety of amazing people who've achieved. And well, for me, I'm a professional singer. I've sung at the Royal Albert Hall, Festival Hall, as well as the Dells and little theatres all around the country. But my dad was a stockbroker, and I went into accountancy. I've been in filmmaking as a producer, assistant director. I'll tell you all about this later. I'm just giving you, whetting your appetite. And what else did I do? I set up a toasted sandwich bar. I was a cake maker. And finally, the singing, but that was all the way through it. During the second day, the 6-day war, I was even invited to set up a charity, which we called Aleph. We were all in our 20s, to raise money to send medical equipment to the Rebecca Seek Medical Center in Sfat in Israel. And even now I'm developing a range of underpants for men with light incontinence, and I've sold them to a couple of friends, a couple of people in the synagogue. And I'm very chuffed about that, because you're all so jolly supportive. Amazing. You're an amazing congregation. And I've been a member of many with several, and this is the best. You can't beat South Hampstead. And I don't mind schlepping down from North Finchley. There's nothing quite like it. And I'm even working on a series of children's short stories at the moment. During the 6-day war in the early 70s, I became chairman of a group of youngsters who set up a charity called Aleph, which managed to send medical equipment to the Rebecca Seek Medical Center in Israel, which was on 3 sides of the north part of Israel. Very proud. And I wouldn't send money. I would only send equipment, because I didn't want the money to get sort of waylaid from somebody. We knew everything that was going on. That's why I loved our charity, because every penny went towards Israel, and we watched every penny. But all through my life, ever since I was a child, I've always wanted to sing. Ever since my dad put me in front of they had a record player with 78s. Do you remember 78s, ladies and gentlemen? And he used to stack them up and put me in front of it, and I was as quiet as a mouse. And I was probably 2 years old or 3 years old. And if that finished, then they shoved me under the piano. So it's always been there, the singing. So I thought, to start off with, if I can get this right, I'm going to sing you a song, so at least you know I'm telling the truth. So here we go. I hope. If we hope. Yes, we do. Here we go. And this is to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. You're just too marvelous for words, like glorious, glamorous, that'll stand by amorous. It's all too wonderful to ever find the words to tell enough, say enough. I mean, they just aren't swell enough. You're much too much, and just too very, very, to ever be in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds to tell you that you're marvelous, too marvelous for words. Let's hear the orchestra. Little bass.
Its timing is good, good.
You're much too much and just too very, very
There's not much
to ever be in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds to tell you that you're marvelous, to tell you that you're wunderbar, to tell you that you're marvelous, too marvelous for words. Now you know I can sing. So let's start at the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my goodness, thank you so much. I told you it was going to be a slightly different show today, but if I sing, you got to sing, otherwise you talk. I was born, my father was a stockbroker who loved amateur dramatics. My mother loved amateur dramatics, and they both met in the Stock Exchange Amateur Dramatics Society called SHtory. And that was my father's passion. And in fact, I wasn't even aware of it until about the age of 11, when my father asked me to appear in a production of The Dancing Years by Ivan Novello, and I played the little bastard son called Carmedley, which they didn't tell me about. All they told me was, well, when I make my entrance in the third act, all the old ladies in the audience would cry, and they did. So because of that, they put me in another show called Simon and Laura, which starred the wonderful actress Carol Shelley, who was a dear friend of ours. And again, her parents came from Germany. And she went on to play one of the Pigeon sisters in The Odd Couple in New York. And sadly, she passed away. She was also in Showboat, and they even dimmed the lights. And this is when I first met Carol in 1957, and I was a little boy. And I actually played with my dad, who was also very good, and he played the Jewish agent. And my goodness, did he chew up the scenery, but we loved him, and he was fabulous. So that was my passion. And of course, my sister was very jealous about this, but that's another story. But I loved it. And of course, there was the music. And I was at a place called Arnold House School, and they were impressed, and they gave me private tuition because the headmaster, Mr. Smart, said I was the only one out of the 300 choir that took any notice of the singing, and I took it seriously. So I was given free singing lessons, which was so exciting. Anyway, then I won a couple of cups for singing. I learned to play the piano, but very badly. In fact, my teacher said, Robert has what he wants to do, but he hasn't got the capabilities to do it. There you go. Anyway, we moved to Berkhamsted, and I try and set up a film company and make the school film, which I get thrown off because it's too complicated for everybody to do. So it was taken out of my hands, which was really upsetting. Remember, I was only about 15 now. And then I leave school, and Dad says, right, 3 choices: stockbroking, father's business; accountancy, the world is your oyster; or university. And I said, Dad, if I'm going to go to university, I want to speak the language. I don't want to study it. So I want to go to the country. And Dad said, no. So I ended up in accountancy, Wilson Big, which was the tutorial firm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on the first day, wasn't very successful. There I was. Do you remember those old-fashioned hand adding machines? Do you ever remember those? Any of you were old enough to remember them? And I was given this thing to add a load of cash accounts. I didn't know what I was doing. So I go in, and there I am adding these things up, and then suddenly I pull this thing like this, and it jams, and I pull this, and I give it a great big yank. The whole thing explodes, and all these numbers, 1s and 2s and 3s, and go everywhere in the general office. I knew then I was not going to be an accountant. It was a disaster. So I plucked up enough courage to say to my dad, Dad, this isn't working for me. Yes, I got to my intermediate, which you said, if I got to my intermediate, could I go into film? So he said, all right. So through a friend of his called Dr. Knopp, I managed to get a job at Technicolor. And I was a grader. I even ran to my father's horror. He even became a shop steward. A nice Jewish boy being a shop steward. Can you believe it? And we went out on strike once as well. God, my father was ashamed of me. He said, I don't want to even talk to you, Robert. So anyway, I was getting a bit itchy about this and I wanted to get into movies. So I wrote a letter to MGM and at Elstree, and I asked them whether I could get some work there. And I drove off to the studios, which have now sadly passed on. I met a Mr. Beckett, who was an accountant, and I started going on about, remember, I'm only 18 or 19, and I'm telling you all about the MGM musicals, and you can't get the records, and they're all deleted, and how awful. And he said, well, Mr. Haberman, or Robert, there is a movie coming up. It's called Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Maybe I can get you to be a T-boy or something. Well, my heart stopped a beat. So sure enough, I got into this. I have never felt so happy in my life. It starred Petula Clark, Peter O'Toole, and all of the old MGM technical people from Hollywood. They all came over. And Herb Ross, who ended up by producing and directing some wonderful, wonderful films. He was the director. It was his first film. And Ken Adam, who went on to design all the James Bond sets, he was on it. And Leslie Bricusse wrote the songs. And I used to go around every night taking up all the acetate records. I was in seventh heaven. So I worked on that for a year. And then I worked on some other films, such as Carry On Matron, where I met the lovely Valerie Leon, who is a very dear friend of mine, who did some wonderful stuff. She's still going strong at the age of 77, and we're mates. We're really good mates. And I then ended up on a film called Under Milk Wood, which starred Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole and Elizabeth Taylor. And again, it was extraordinary. We were down in Fishguard. Oh, I forgot. And a young newcomer called David Jason. Do you remember David Jason, ladies and gentlemen? That's where he started. And he played No Good Boyo, if anybody knows the play. And we became terribly successful. And I remember seeing the rushes of David and thinking, David, you're a star. And he said, no, I'm not. I said, yes, you are. And so we tried to make some short films, but we couldn't. It just didn't happen. I don't know why. The film industry is very tough. And in addition to that, what also happened, I wrote a script called Duff, and we offered it to a young unknown director called, I can't remember his name, Steven Spielberg. You've heard of Steven Spielberg? 1973 or 72 or 71. Anyway, young man. And he liked the script, and I'd co-written it with a man called Anthony Sloman. And I thought, right, we're there. We're going to get this young unknown director to direct it. He was working for TV for Universal. Well, Tony said, well, if I can't direct it, nobody directs it. End of the film. That's it. And I've still got the script somewhere in my library. So that was the end of that. And then, of course, in addition to this, what also happened is my father dies, which is ghastly. I'm only 24 or 25, and I have a mother to keep. I had to take responsibility. So the films became past, and I thought, now what do I do? So I remembered some years back, I saw a wonderful, I don't like sandwiches, ladies. I hate them. They're dry and nasty. They're better than they were, but in the 70s, they were disgusting. And I remember coming into this pub and seeing these wonderful, they're called jaffles in Australia. They're sealed toasted sandwiches. And you put them into this machine. I still got one of the machines. So if you want to try one, you can come over and I'll do one. Kosher, of course. And you put the bread on, you put a center thing in the middle, like a Breville machine. And you put the top, and then you bring it down, and you cook it for about 3 minutes. It's delicious. It's the best thing you could ever have. So I set up a business called Toasty Bars in 1976. And I ran it for about 7 years, during which Faye Mashler, the critic, heard about me, gave me a review. And Time Out also gave me a review saying, when you went into my shop, it was so hot, it was like living in hell, but the food was good. That was my Toasty Bars. But also, and this is important, in the basement, I started developing a cake, but we weren't allowed to bake in my shop. It was what they call light licensing, so you weren't allowed to bake. But I developed this thanks to a friend of mine, a cousin of mine, a cake called a fudge cake, fudge biscuit cake, which you made with a golden syrup and chocolate, lots of chocolate, and butter and crumbs. And you made it together, put it in, you refrigerated it, took it out of the refrigerator, cut it, and served it. Well, in those days, remember we're talking about 1977, 78, everything was round, and brownies were just something in America, which we never talked about. So I used to put little bits on the front for people to try. This is while I was selling the toasted sandwiches. And people started eating it. So it went very well. One day, it was a Saturday, I'll never forget it. We have a basement, as I told you, and in the basement, we had one of these cakes being defrosted. Anyway, there was a break-in, and the thieves went right across all the offices in Brewer Street, ending up in the basement where this cake was being defrosted. They went in, they got their fingers, obviously had eaten it, and with their finger, they went, nice. So I knew I had a business there. Well, after 7 years, I had 2 shops, one in Brewer Street and one in Queensway, and I sold them. And then I thought, now what do I do? Now I think it was 1982. And I went to, if you remember in those days, like a history lesson, Covent Garden was going to be developed and it all went horribly wrong. I think all the big property companies were going to take it, going to knock everything down. But this was one of the first times when all the residents got up in arms and said no, and they won. So suddenly there were all these empty shops. So my mother said to me, Robert, get on your bicycle, go down there and try and sell something. Well, a place called News Point in Longacre said, well, it's a bit hot. It was the middle of summer. Why don't you, I said, would you try my sandwiches? They said, well, it's a bit hot for sandwiches. Anything else? And I said, yeah, I've got a cake. Bring it in. So I cycled home, made a cake, came back, gave it to them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the beginning of my company called Robert's Fudge Factory. It was so successful, but I wasn't enjoying it because I wasn't doing my music. So what I did every Thursday, without fail, I managed to go down to the Guildhall School of Music. I had a teacher and I did an hour or 2 hours. And slowly I learned my craft of singing. So it sweetened the bitter pill of working in the cake business. And that was that. And slowly I worked with a man called Peter Churchill, who's now a very eminent composer, songwriter, performer, jazz pianist. And I did my first show at Pizza on the Park with all my friends, because who the heck would know me? But that was the beginning. And that was 1990. My mother died. And I thought, now we've got to start really working hard. The business was growing. And then all of a sudden, and this is where the story of Margaret Whiting comes in, because I happened to be at Pizza on the Park where I had performed. And there was a friend of mine called Mark Murphy, who was a jazz singer. And he was rehearsing in my house with Peter. And he said, as a thank you, come to hear Margaret Whiting sing at Pizza on the Park. Now, let me just tell you who Margaret Whiting is, for those of you who don't know much about music or about this type of music. Margaret Whiting's father was Richard Whiting, who'd written the song that I sang called Too Marvellous for Words. Now you're going to get it. And a song called Till We Meet Again, and Beyond the Blue Horizon, and so forth. And Margaret herself became a singer in the 40s. She was one of the first recording artists for Capitol Records, which was Johnny Mercer, who was also a writer, who wrote Too Marvellous for Words, and took little young Margaret, who was only 14, and said, I'm going to make you into a singer. And she became a top recording artist during the 40s and 50s. And we became friends. Anyway, I went down to Pizza on the Park, and there she was, absolutely lovely. And somebody told her that I sang. Or she said, can you bring a cassette in? Those days with cassettes. I said, of course. So the following day, I bring in my cassette, and she says, oh, thank you very much. And then somebody tells her, oh, you know, Robert has cake, makes the cakes. He's a cake maker. So she turns around, because she loved food. She said, not chocolate cake. And I said, yes. She said, do you have any? I said, well, yes, I have some, Miss Whiting, in my car. So off I went to my car, bring some in, and she's just about to eat it. Now this piece was chocolate and caramel and biscuit crumbs, so it's pretty rich. And she's just about to eat this. And I said, Miss Whiting, don't think you should eat this before you go on stage. To which she said, okay, I'll do a deal with you. You stay for the second set and I'll need you afterwards. And I said, okay. So that's the beginning. And then I took her home to her flat and she said, where does one eat in England? And I took her out to the, we spent a whole day at the Complete Angler in Marlow. And we were talking about music. And she said, I'd like to hear your stuff now. So we go back to my apartment. And I mean, I'm in heaven, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually in seventh heaven. She kicks off her shoes, I make her a cup of tea, and I play this album, which is on a cassette. The first song is Too Marvelous for Words. Now you see the connection. And she turns around and she says, you're ahead of the beat. You're ahead of the beat. What's next? I played the next one. She said, yes, we'll sort this out in New York. And I said, New York? What do you mean New York? Oh, you're going to come over to New York and I'm going to train you. And I went, I beg your pardon. I said, I'd love to, but I can't afford you. She said, Robert, I like you as a person. I will not charge you, but if we bring in directors or arrangers or pianists, then you pay them. Is that a deal? I said, fine. So off I went to New York. And can you believe this? Leave the cake company with 100-odd people in it to do this. Can you believe it? In March 1993. And off I go. And we're sitting there and she's training me and everything. And it just so happens there's auditions for a symposium. Now, let me explain what a symposium is. There are lots of Broadway artists on Broadway in the shows. And after a run finishes, they're all unemployed and they have no income. So the symposium was created to teach these people how to do solo shows. So Margaret says, why did you come in and sit with me? And would you like to? I said, I'd love to. So off we go and we sit in this place called 88's in downtown New York. Can you believe this is all happening to me? Because I couldn't believe. There is this middle-class Jewish boy from Hampstead. I mean, it was crazy. So we're sitting there and there are these adjudicators like Liza Minnelli and K-Star and all these people all sitting there going, thank you. If anybody's ever seen The Producers, do you remember the audition scene where somebody comes in and they go, thank you, before they've even sung? That's what it was like, ladies and gentlemen. It was horrendous. I felt so sorry for these people. They had to get through 300. And out of the 300 applicants or auditioners, they would pick 30. So we go back to Margaret's apartment after the first day, which is very hard. And she turns around and she says, Robert, I think you should audition for this. I said, I think you're crazy. I'm a cake maker. No, you've got a good voice. I think you can do this. Well, you can imagine what I was feeling like, ladies and gentlemen. I was petrified. So we took a song, which unfortunately I haven't got a recording of because I'd love to perform it for you. We took the Tom Jones song, It's Not Unusual. For some reason, Margaret decided that I should do a Tom Jones. And I looked at my rather meager little body and said, I don't think I should do Tom Jones. She said, do it this way. So I did it. Anyway, come the day of auditioning, I'm absolutely petrified. Can you imagine performing to all these great professionals and having seen what went on the day before? Can you imagine what I was feeling like? It was pretty terrifying. I mean, I was from London, for God's sake. So in I go, and I go up and I sing my song, which runs literally 2 minutes 45. I tell you that for a reason. And there's total silence. And I think I bombed. I really think it's been a disaster. Nobody's interrupted me. So there's this darkened place in front of me, rather like today. And I go, hello? Hello? Anybody out there? And they say, yes, it's wonderful. Can you do something else? Anyway, to cut a long story short, I get a scholarship. Margaret is so proud of me, and off I go to Connecticut. What happens to my cake company, you ask? What happens? Well, I had a lot of wonderful managers, and I managed to get away from the week. Off I go to Connecticut, where I learned how to put together shows. And I win this scholarship, and then I do town hall. where I perform 2 songs, and then from there I do my own show. Come the end of that year, which was 1993, Margaret phones me up and says, "Good news and bad news, Robert. I'm back in London now." I said, "What's it?" She said, "You've just been nominated for Best International Performer in New York." I said, "I beg your pardon, you're joking." She said, "I wish I wasn't, but I'm afraid you have been nominated." I said, "What's the bad news?" "You're not going to win it." I said, "Okay." So do I come over to New York? Nah, don't waste your time. So a couple of months passed. We're now, I think it was April 94. I get a phone call from Margaret on Bank Holiday Monday, Easter Monday. "Congratulations." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You've just won Best International Performer of New York." I said, "You're crazy." She said, "I wish I wasn't, but I'm afraid I'm not joking." So I've got this Oscar. I've actually got this Oscar in my house saying that I was Best International Performer. So then I turned around and I said, "Now what do I do, Margaret?" She said, "You go back to London and you do what you've been taught." So I said, "Well, who?" "Do Frank." I said, "Frank who?" She said, "Frank Sinatra. You know him. We met, we had lunch." And I said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you about that. We had lunch with Frank, but that's another story." So much to tell you. So I said, "Well, I can't do a show about Frank. There's only one Frank Sinatra." She said, "Call him. He's not coming over again to London again." So I called Frank. Can you believe me phoning Frank Sinatra? Huh? Can you believe this? He's my icon. So I phoned him up and I said, "Mr. Sinatra," shaking like a leaf, "Margaret and Kay staff suggest I do a show about you in London." "What's it about?" he says rather gruffly. "Well, it'll be about your life," I says rather meekly. "Anything else?" And I knew exactly what he was alluding to. And I said, "Well, it'll be about your life." "Well, if it's anything else, I'll know." Phone went down. That was it. So there I did. I went to the festival hall, and it happened. I did the show on the date of his 80th birthday, which I was so excited to do, and we were full. It was amazing. And then I started touring. In fact, so much so that I did one with a big band with my musical director, Trevor Brown, who I've met in 1989, who is still with me today, an amazing man who'd been a musical director with people like Shirley Bassey, Michael Barrymore, major person at Thames Television. And wonderful, very talented man, very, very low key. And we did it. And we did a big album, a big band show of this. And 2 production companies came up and said, "We'd like to turn this into a big musical." So I said, "Thank you very much." And there I was running the cake company meanwhile. Honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, can you imagine what I was going through? So I audition and they say, "No, we don't want you because we're going to do a thing called the Rat Pack," which means not just Frank Sinatra, but there'll be Dean Martin and Sammy Davis. And we want to have a set of people, and you won't be one of them. I said, "Thank you very much. That's part of show business, ladies and gentlemen, the disappointment." So I get the job. Suddenly I get a phone call from the musical director, Clive Dunstall, who says, "Robert, what you doing?" I said, "Making cakes." He said, "No, you're not. You're coming over to do the Rat Pack." I said, "Where?" "Manchester Opera House." I said, "I beg your pardon." I said, "I don't even know what the show is." He said, "Yes, you do. It's Frank Sinatra. You'll know his songs." So off I treks to Manchester, where I play Frank Sinatra. And I'm in it for 4 weeks, and we go to Wolverhampton. And then the man, Louis Hoover, who I'd replaced, came back into the show. And I went back, mercifully, to the cake company. And Margaret was so proud. She was so proud of me that I could do all this, because it was thanks to her. And Frank, of course, and K-Star. They were wonderful to me. So now where are we? Let me just see where I am at. Yeah, so halfway through I got rid of my cake business in early 2003, feeling very depressed because I loved it. And I remember a friend of mine saying, "Oh, I got rid of the cake business. Right, now you can do your singing." And guess what? That's what I decided to do. But life has strange things. And in the middle of it, I suddenly had to have a triple bypass. So off I go in to have a triple bypass. And then I have a prostatectomy within 3 or 4 months of that. I even had to perform one of the shows at Saga Holidays with a catheter down the side of my leg. I was petrified people would see the bag under my leg. I was terrified. but we got through the show. As they say, the show goes on. So I get through that, but I realized the pants for the light incontinence, because, sorry to get so graphic about this, but after you've had some of these awful operations, you become incontinent for a few weeks. And I couldn't stand the nasty little throwaway pads that people were being forced to wear. So I spoke to a friend of mine who is a very clever businessman online and said, Patrick, I need to find some underpants which can be reused. And we trawled the internet, or rather he trawled the internet, I found them. And we went into a business called SHtory, which I started 3 years ago. And the singing, don't forget about the singing. And, sorry, and, oh, excuse me about this. And so we set this company up 3 years ago. And over the 3 years that we've been doing it online, it's extradry.co.uk. We've had 100% feedback, and we're just about to develop it again to make it go forward. But the response has been so positive. Even some people in Shul, who I was talking to, said they wanted some, and I supplied them very proudly. Excuse me. And that's my SHtory. What else can I tell you? Oh yes, we're now into lockdown. What do we do during lockdown? Well, again, somebody said, why don't you sing a couple of songs on Facebook every day? Because there are so many people who feel so isolated, and maybe you can entertain them. So from the 8th of May this year, at 6:05 on Facebook line, I sing 2 songs. And I have not missed, only once have I missed one day, that I've sung everything from Frank Sinatra to disco. Can you imagine you doing disco? D-I-S-C-O, D-I-S-C-O. I tell you, awful, not a pretty sight. But there I am, ladies and gentlemen, at 6:05. If anybody wants to come and see me, that's what I do. Now, the other thing I've done, and I've forgotten to tell you, is when I was at Saga, a man who'd set up TV Times, lovely man, asked me to do a show about his life. So I write these shows to commemorate people's anniversaries and birthdays and so forth. And I get them to choose their 12 favorite songs. And then I build a script around them. And then I tell the story and I sing the songs. And I've been doing this now for about 4 or 5 years. It's been so successful because a lot of people have got most wonderful stories to tell. And it's a wonderful way to share it with their family and friends. So I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. And that's about it. And then, of course, the other thing I've started doing is writing songs. And a friend of mine said, why didn't you write some songs? And I said, oh, I can't do that. And so I did. So I said, well, give me some titles. So they said, why not do If I Ever Fall in Love Again, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I wrote a lot of songs, one of which Barbara Streisand has taken up, and hopefully I will get paid for it when she actually records it. But it was very exciting. Can you imagine speaking to Miss Streisand, who is extraordinary? And we had a long chat. And then, of course, a friend of mine suggested that I do a song about children in need. So I wrote a song about children in need. And finally, I wrote a Christmas song. Now you're all saying, how can you write a Christmas song? A good Jewish boy like you, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, which is the most famous Christmas song of the 20th century? White Christmas, written by Irving Berlin, who was Jewish. So I thought, well, if he can do it, so can I. So this is a song, ladies and gentlemen, to finish my show, called It's Christmas, I hope, if I can see it. Let me put my glasses on, because otherwise I'm going to mess it all up, as usual. Yes, I've got it here. And thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. Before I finish, let me tell you, my website for SHtory is SHtory with an X, extradry.co.uk. And my own website is roberthaberman.net. So thank you for listening. Here is my song, I hope, It's Christmas. Enjoy. Bye. The stores are all lit up 'cause it's Christmas. The streets are chock-a-block 'cause it's Christmas. The soundless children's crying with screams of such delight. But all the time is special, it's Christmas, it's Christmas. The trees are finer than it's Christmas. The kids are wide awake 'cause it's Christmas. The carols singing with gusto and delight. What are they singing for when it's Christmas? It's such a holiday, so throw your cares away. No matter come or may, everyone smiles. The families all as one are having so much fun. All this happiness makes it all worthwhile. The kids are all dressed up for this Christmas. The lights are flying around and it's Christmas. The smell of mother's turkey, her puddings and its pies. Why all this preparation is Christmas? To hear the church bells chime and watch the candles shine. Look at the mistletoe and shine it clear. Enjoy the pantomime and watch your spirits climb. It's a shame it comes only once a year. As long as we're together, it's Christmas. Despite this icy weather, it's Christmas. Let's raise our glasses high and toast it with good cheer. This very special time we call Christmas. It's Christmas, for Christmas is here. Well, that's the end of my show. Thank you so much. First, I'd love to thank Tom and Gillian so much, and of course the Pinchons that have been so lovely to suggest me and recommend me. Now, apparently, I think we've done it okay. It's only 11:41, so we've done well. Any questions? I'm out there to answer any questions you would like. So I hope. I don't know how to do this thing, but just talk. I can hear you.
I'll do it, Robert. Robert, I'd like to thank you. It was a fascinating morning. We're all intrigued with your music. We've put up your address and your website on the chat. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can. It's on the chat. The address is there.
So kind of you. But I cannot tell you how important South Hampstead is to me. Oh, I tell you what we forgot to mention, of course, was wonderful Richie Horenstein. Do you remember Richie, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
A remarkable woman. And I'll tell you how I met her. It was amazing. I have a computer, and this computer man suggested that was also going to Richie. And I suddenly get this phone call from Richie one day. Hello, is that Robert Haberman? You know where she talked. And I said, yes. He said, my name is Richie Horenstein. I believe we have the same computer man. I said, yes. Would you like to come for tea? Yes, so off I go to her place for tea. And we became such good friends. The first thing, I'll make you laugh, a lovely story about her. I told you this friend of mine who's very good at computers and stuff, and called Patrick. And he was at the house, and I went down to see her. And she says, Robert, I have a problem with my computer. I seem to be having whatever it was. And I said, well, maybe I can get some friends. I'm not very good at it. Well, no, you can do it. You can do it. You know what Reggie was like, ladies and gentlemen. Quite a character. So I said, well, why did you press this? And why do you? It doesn't work. Get out of my house. I have to take a value. Get out of my house. That was my first meeting with Dirk and Richie. But we became such good friends. I've got a video of her singing, playing Bart's Prelude in C. And she even got me some work. And I did one of my shows at the Belsize Square Theatre, because she was a remarkable woman. She told me, though she never wanted to talk about her life and how she escaped, but we were coming back from a restaurant which her favourite Italian restaurant in Hampstead. And we were walking down England's Lane, and she started opening up and telling me her whole story of how she escaped and got what was then Palestine. And she kept on telling everybody, "You know, I killed my husband." I went, "I beg your pardon." It's not exactly a great opening conversation line. And she was wonderful, and she promoted shows at the Roundhouse. Remarkable woman, and I went to her 90th birthday. She was just something very special, and I miss it to this day. And I should really dedicate the show to her, because she really was lovely. The only person I've ever cried with in a funeral. I miss her. She got me. She understood me. Anyway, that's my thing with Richie. No, sorry, back to you again. I'm so sorry. Questions? Hello?
You considered writing a Hanukkah song?
Yes, I will. Would you like me to run? I will. Well, I think it's a bit. I don't think I'll have it ready for today or this week, because it takes time.
How about Hanukkah? Hanukkah's about the 14th of December. Do you think you could manage it for then?
I won't make any promises, because it's not like switching a light on and off, but I will have a look at it. I'll do my best.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
It could be a special youngish Hanukkah song. That would
Well,
be
I'll see. Well,
really
you know how hard it is to write songs, don't you, Tom?
yes.
Thank you. How long does it take you to write yours?
Oh, I can only tell you how long ago I started.
How long was that?
Well, I started about 3 or 4 days ago.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I expect to finish in 2024.
you better burn the midnight oil. Takes a long time. Sometimes it comes very easily, like it's Christmas. I remember I was on a bicycle in the middle of summer, and it just came like that. Some of them are really hard. Children of the World took a long time, and several of them have taken time. I've got a song like, if you're not too fed up at the end, I may give you at the very, very end. If you're not too fed up with me. Oh, good, I can see you now. I couldn't see you before. I had all this stuff helping me. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Are there any questions? Anybody like to ask Robert anything?
Have you got anybody on there?
We have a lot of people on there. We have 32 people on there.
You're kidding. Hello,
No.
32 people.
Judith, do you want to say anything about Richie?
Hi. While Judith's unmuting herself, Judith, you go ahead and then I'll speak afterwards.
Okay, well, I've been a friend of Robert for many, many years. And what I love about Robert, not just, he's an amazing friend, I have to say that. He's an incredible friend for everything he does. He's still there for you. I just want to say, I love his determination. I love his talent. And I'm not sure what else I can say, because
Judy,
it
can I tell you
it falls. What?
Can I interrupt one thing? I always remember we were at the theatre, and you know what I'm going to say. I just got rid of the cake company, and you were with David, lovely David, and I was saying, oh, I've just got rid of my business. Oh, and I was feeling, it was terrible, Sturm und Drang. And Judy just told me, good, you can now do your singing, can't you? And I went, oh, it was like a quick sort of doing this, and right, you can do your singing and filmmaking now, can't you? And I went, yeah, you're right, stop being sorry for yourself. And and then of course Caroline and Raymond got me into the South Hampstead Station synagogue in the first place. So hello for you. I've got to thank you for that.
I'm going to mute myself now. Right.
Okay. Robert,
Thank you.
Robert, I have lots of wonderful memories, but two I remember was the Aleph, where we forged a lot of friendships when we were in our early teens, and that continued throughout our lifetime. And I think that was your inception, that you organized Aleph. And the other thing you did was we created a 1920s tea party in Grosvenor Square for charity, which was tremendous. People are still talking about it. Robert has a lot of pizzazz, positivity is the modern word, and style. And this party was the most talked about party for many, many years. And also to endorse you, Robert, when you mentioned the fact that you always wanted Aleph not to give money, but medical instruments. And you gave me the privilege of taking the instruments to Israel, to the Rebecca Seif Hospital, which is something I will never forget.
I never knew that.
You did.
I
I
never
was
knew
stopped.
that at all.
I was stopped at the airport because of security. They unwrapped everything and held up the plane for these instruments that we brought. They were medical to help during a vascular operation.
Gosh, I never knew that.
Judith-
One thing I do remember, I was very stubborn, ladies and gentlemen, when I was doing my singing. You remember this, Caroline, and we had a big band one. Do you remember in Gower Street? And we were going to have a big band, which a big band, ladies and gentlemen, is 17 piece. And the chairman at the time said, you can only have 40. Nobody will notice. I said, I'll notice. We have the 17. And I got my way.
Judith Casriel.
Wonderful talk, Robert.
Thank you.
And my introduction to Robert was when he charmingly, graciously, and with great patience helped me write my first music talk on Bernstein, who I think he knew personally. And he gave me such confidence and he gave me all the benefit of his experience, which I always appreciate because I've then gone on to do more. But he was fantastically helpful. And then, of course, my first experience of Richie was when she phoned me up about it was the coming up to the Pesach Easter weekend. Well, she said, it is a very long weekend and somebody must be lonely. I would like to visit such a person. So I spoke to the Robertson, Lindy, and she suggested that I find out, what Richie wanted. And I set up, I made a lunch and invited a few like-minded people with help from various members of the synagogue. And then I left it. I didn't know whether I could carry on making lunches on my own, but Caroline and I were discussing at some musical event that Robert was involved with, and we decided to set up the teas. And from that, the Arts Club developed. And it was all because of my conversation with Richie and my conversation with Caroline, and then also with Robert's involvement as well. So a lot of events have happened as a result of Robert and Richie, and I miss her dreadfully. And I wish I'd spent more time with her while she was alive, because she was a remarkably interesting and I think she was slightly difficult at times, but she had a fascinating life. And she and I loved each other. And, I'm sorry, Robert, she never threw me out of her flat. I was very careful what I said.
Get out of my house.
Marilyn,
The wonderful
Marilyn, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say, Robert, thank you very much. I don't know you personally, but I remember when we had the old shul, I used to look down on the bimmer and you were always singing or in the choir. And that's kind of my introduction to you, but you've been very entertaining this morning. But I would love that recipe for that chocolate cake. It sounds amazing. And although I'm eating an awful lot of cake during this lockdown, I can always add another one to take the place of banana cake. So is there any way you can post it?
I will work.
Or
I have 16 different recipes.
Oh, God, no, the one you described, there was one you put in the fridge, or the fridge, an easy one, yeah?
Yeah, that's very easy. We didn't have a name. We used to call it chocolate splodge. But it's good stuff. But it's good. It's nice.
Right. Well,
I will get it to you.
I'll send you an email. You put two email addresses, Gillian. Which is the correct one?
One is an email and one is a website.
Ah, well, I've got the email address.
The first one is Robert's email address. If anybody wants to get in touch with him, because he does do weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Right, okay. I'm not sure I'm up to that yet, but I'd like to make my own. And you can send me a few variety of recipes. I'd be delighted, because that's my weakness. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Robert, I have a question. I want to ask you about stage fright.
Yes.
I can understand that very well in beginners, but I never understood how seasoned performers still get it.
It gets worse.
Oh, how come?
Because you've built, I remember talking, sorry, I'm dropping a name here. Bing, Barbara. Remember, you have a reputation, and therefore, when you come on stage, you think, what if I don't come up to their expectations? So even today, I have never been so nervous in my life, because I really was very nervous, really nervous. And I thought, you know, because I know a lot of you, obviously, but also you wanted to be good. And you think, well, God, can you imagine? He calls himself a singer. He talks like this. How can he even go on stage like this? There are all these terrible things that run through your head. And it's adrenaline. I'll probably crash, but I get terribly nervous. And if I don't, when I go on, I mean, I know I do a Sinatra show called His Way, as you know, and I do one about Irving Berlin, which is wonderful. And I do one about George Gershwin, which are stunning shows about their lives from beginning to end, with about 30 songs. And the Sinatra, I can go in and do it on my head. But if you do, woe betide, because you can get to the third song and suddenly you're relaxed like this and a line goes and you can't remember the line, or you can't remember the next word song, and you have to treat it like the first performance. You mustn't ever forget that. It's terrifying. And believe me, today I was very worried. I was walking up and downstairs, didn't know what to do. I said, God, this is going to be disastrous, you know. And because I've never had to do anything like this before, where I talk about myself. But people said, oh, but you love talking about yourself. I said, that's different. But thank you so much for letting me to indulge.
Robert, we're near the end now. Do you have a final song for us?
Well, if I can set it up, it's called To My Friends, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to sing it. You'll just probably have to just listen to it, if you don't mind. And let me just tell you why I wrote this. When I went into the triple bypass, I thought, how am I going to get through 3 days? And it's this, and I wrote this song about my friends. And I'm afraid I haven't got a backing track, so you're just going to have to listen to it. I can mime it if you wish, but I hope you like it, and thank you very much. I hope this works, because it was all done very, let's see, it's working. There you go. We're there. Now I've come home after a long time, feeling like myself once more, living a life that's full of meaning, a life to live for evermore. But there's some very special people whose huge support has made me strong. For them I've written down these verses. To them I dedicate this song. To my friends who have been so supportive and strong for me. To my friends who have been so devoted and true. To my friends who I've certainly known for a long, long time. And to friends I just met and are still very new. To my friends who have stood close beside me in troubled times. And to friends whom I've shared lots of wonderful news. To my friends who have struggled through life in the hardest times, and in spite of everything, came smiling through. To my friends who love spending their life going round the world, and to friends who live life on their own. To those friends who enjoy sharing life with their families, all these friends are as close as their foes.
my friends, whose wonderful kindness I'll never forget. To my friends who will always remain in my heart. To my friends who I know I can turn to in troubled times. And I pray they will never depart. To my friends whom I'll always remember through all of my life. And to friends who have always been faithful and true. To my friends who have lived in my heart throughout all of these years. My dear friends, this song specially for you. My
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Robert.